and welcome. If you recently sold a home, congratulations. This is huge, right? We get lots of calls from people who recently sold a home because it is a very big financial transition. Before I get into that, let me introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Leah Hadley. I am the founder of Great Lakes Investment Management and Great Lakes Divorce Financial Solutions. And we help people navigate life transitions, all of the financial decisions that go along with those life transitions. And if you're joining me live, I hope you will let me know that you are here watching. Happy to answer questions along the way. And certainly, if you are watching the recording, let me know that as well. I always come back and answer any questions that you may have. But when you do sell a house, it is a major financial change for a lot of folks. Now, people sell houses for a variety of reasons. We do a lot of work in the divorce space. So there's, obviously a lot of reasons that people sell houses as a result of a divorce. Right now, I see a lot of people selling off investment properties just with the market where it's at, taking advantage of the opportunity to capitalize on the home prices and to reposition their assets and have additional liquidity for opportunities that may arise. So at any rate, regardless of the reason why you sold your house, it is a big change, right? Going from this illiquid asset that, the real estate, to having this lump sum of cash, and for a lot of people, they are going to reinvest it into some, or maybe a portion of it into real estate. But what I'm hearing from a lot of folks is they may not be doing that right away, or even if they are doing it right away, a lot of times they may not want to reinvest all of it. So today we're kind of exploring, what are those next financial steps that you take when you have sold a house and you need to make some decisions, right? And it's a really, really good opportunity to evaluate your overall financial situation and really create that financial plan. Now, if you don't have a financial plan in place, that's why I'm saying create a financial plan. Quite honestly, most people don't have a full comprehensive financial plan in place. Sometimes people may have a plan around certain goals that they have, maybe higher education goals for their children, retirement goals, but that full comprehensive financial plan that really looks at all areas of your life, what your overall goals are, what's most important to you, what your priorities are, what your values are, and really aligning your financial decisions with all of what you want to accomplish in your life and what matters to you. That's what financial planning is really all about. There is a lot of confusion, I think, in the marketplace. A lot of folks think that financial planning is just about managing investments. And that is certainly a piece of it for a lot of people. And when I say investments, a lot of people associate financial planning specifically with stock market investments. But really, financial planning looks at everything. It looks at real estate investments, right? It looks at bond alternative. It looks at everything. It looks at tax planning. It looks at all pieces of, risk management, insurance planning, all of that. So when you have a big financial change, like selling real estate and having this liquidity event, it's a fantastic time to take a step back before you decide what you're going to do with those funds and really evaluate big picture. What do you want for yourself? Right? So if you haven't created that comprehensive plan, I think it's a really good time to take that step back and look at what does a broader plan look like for you. When you have that broader plan in place, when you're clear around what your financial goals are, when you're clear around your values and your priorities, it actually makes those financial decisions so much easier, right? For example, we work with a lot of people who have been through very stressful situations, whether it's going through a divorce or losing a loved one, lots of people dealing with medical challenges, all kinds of different life transitions, right? And so a lot of times what people are really craving after the turmoil that they've experienced in their life is stability and financial security, right? And so a lot of times what we are looking at is things like minimizing fixed expenses, things like maximizing access to liquid capital and making sure that people have enough access to cash that they feel financially secure and they have flexibility, they have freedom, right? Access to liquid assets does give you a lot more options, gives you a lot more choice, right? So when we're looking at the overall financial picture, we do want to look at what matters, what's most important. Certainly, if there is debt, if there's high interest rate debt, when you have a liquidity event, like a sale of a house, it is a great time to look at the debt and see, are there debts that it makes sense to eliminate completely, to just pay them off, right? But you want to look at that in the broader context, because sometimes what people do is they take all of their liquid assets and they pay off all this debt, but they don't necessarily have a plan then going forward about, well, then where am I going to access cash, right? It just ends up taking on more debt. That's where it's important to have that plan in place before you make the decision to do that. How much does it really make sense to take and to use to apply to debt, right? But if you have some high interest rate debt, this is a good time to really take a look at that strategically and see, does it make sense to use some of the funds, the proceeds from the sale of the house, in order to eliminate that debt? Boy, that feels good for a lot of people, especially that high interest expense. You've seen those variable rate debts go, the interest on the variable rate debt going up and up over the last couple of years. So that can be a great time to really get yourself in a situation where you can eliminate that debt and invest going forward, right? If you don't have an emergency savings account built up, this can be a really good time to evaluate your monthly expenses and figure out, how much do I really need to have in emergency savings to give me the financial security and stability that I need going forward, right? And to set that money aside, not to be touched. Still, you want to make sure that you're putting it in a savings account or other liquid asset that is giving you a solid interest rate. There's great opportunities, high yield savings accounts right now, to earn a solid interest rate in a completely liquid account without fees. There's lots of opportunities, but this is a good time to look at something like that, especially if you might be in a situation where maybe you're going to be holding on to these funds for a little while. Not a long time, not 10, 20 years, but maybe a year or 2 or 3, and you want to park it somewhere where it's safe, you don't want to take any risk, but you still want that money working for you and earning some money. That's a great time to look at, what are the opportunities available to me with little to no risk, where I can generate some income and have this money working for me. You don't want it just sitting in a very low interest savings account. There's no sense in that, where there are a lot of opportunities in today's market, and there haven't been for years, right? So this is a nice opportunity to take advantage of the interest rate environment that we're in right now. Looking at your big long-term goals though, right? How are you doing relative to your long-term goals? Higher education is a time, where families, a lot of times if kids are growing up, they're going off to college, there's a time where families look at potentially downsizing their home in order to come up with some capital to help pay for higher education expenses. That's not uncommon, but looking at it in the broader context, right? How are you doing relative to your retirement savings, right? Are you investing enough for these bigger long-term goals, or is this an opportunity to kind of reposition things and maybe invest the money? Maybe it is in a higher education savings account, maybe it is in your retirement savings. Certainly, if there are some tax consequences associated with the sale of your property, are there opportunities to reduce the tax liability? And looking at that as part of your holistic plan in that tax year. Remember, you want to look at overall, what are your options to reduce that tax burden if that is an issue that you're dealing with related to the sale of your house, right? So the beauty of having this liquidity event is it gives you options, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they have to take those funds and put them into another property, although sometimes it makes a lot of sense to do so, right? Especially for some people who are investing in real estate, they're trying to avoid certain tax consequences. Sometimes it makes sense to do it, but you really want to look at it again in terms of your overall plan and being very strategic. Whenever there are changes like this, whenever there are transitions like this, I really look at them as opportunities for a little bit of a reset, depending on how much equity was in the house, what we're actually talking about in terms of sale proceeds. That's going to determine what your options are, of course. But for a lot of people, when they sell a house, there is a significant lump sum of money, and it does present a lot of opportunity, a lot of different options, right? And so really evaluating where you are relative to those long-term goals, but also what are your upcoming needs? Are there any big expenses that you are aware of you want to plan for, that you want to make sure that you set some money aside for, right? Now, here's the thing that you want to be really cautious of and really know yourself, know your own spending habits. I see it all because we work with all kinds of clients. We work with, couples. We work with lots of folks who've gone through divorce. We work with individuals. Everybody has different spending habits. But sometimes when people receive these lump sums of money, and they put it away, and then they kind of chisel away at it little by little because they don't necessarily have a plan for it, right? And so sometimes it's like, oh, you know what? I do need to do some work on my car. Yeah, maybe it just makes sense to get a new car, right? And so whether it's a down payment on a vehicle or an outright purchase of a vehicle, and then, well, I want to go on this vacation. I've been putting this off. Now I have all of a sudden, a couple years down the road, you find that you've used a lot more of that money than what you had planned for. And not to say that you can't do those things, as long as they're part of your plan, they are in alignment with your priorities and your values, and it makes sense relative to your overall goals. That's fantastic. But where I think people get really frustrated is when they're chiseling away at that money, and then all of a sudden they wake up one day and it's like, boy, I had $500,000 and now I'm down to $100,000. And it's like, where did the money go, right? And so sometimes when we don't have a plan for it and it's just kind of spending a little bit here, a little bit there, and then waking up one day and realizing that, oh, actually, it's gone, and it's gone a lot faster than I realized. That's the unfortunate surprise. The other thing, and I'm always still surprised at how frequently I'm saying this, is people putting the money away again in just a general savings account or a couple of savings accounts, not paying attention to how much interest that they're earning on those accounts, and missing out even on significant interest that they could be earning, not even investing the funds. There are such great opportunities to have your money working for you, again, with little to no risk right now. And so really looking at that, I mean, that's a big missed opportunity if you are setting that money aside for a while, right? And so there's a lot that you want to consider when you do have a transition like this. You do have that lump sum of money. But the other piece of it, right, is when you are reinvesting in real estate, and let's just assume we're talking about a primary residence here, looking at when you're making decisions about the cost of the place that you want to invest in going forward, making sure that those new expenses, the fixed expenses associated with your new primary residence, are again in alignment with what your overall financial goals are. Does it have anything to do with the amount that came out of the property that you sold? I mean, it does in the big picture, right? It's part of the calculation. But you really want to look at this as an opportunity to reevaluate, because so many people find that they are overspending because, okay, the bank is willing to lend them this much for a mortgage, I must be able to afford it. Well, yeah, maybe you can make the payment, but that also might mean that you're taking away from some of your other goals, right? And so taking this opportunity, if you're going into a new property, to be very diligent, proactive in making decisions around how much do I want my housing expenses to be, right? Making very conscious decisions about that, and making using this as an opportunity to potentially make some adjustments in terms of what your housing expenses are going forward. So I know that's a lot to think about, but again, it really does start with taking that step back before you make any decisions on what to do with the sale proceeds, and thinking about, what do I want for myself? What are my most important financial goals? So many people I talk to nowadays want to retire early. That's a big conversation that we have with a lot of folks. If you want to retire early, keeping your fixed expenses low, making sure your money is working hard for you, right? Those are two key factors in helping you to reach that goal. And so keeping that in mind. as you're making decisions about what to do with that lump sum of money. It's really, really important. Okay. If you would like assistance with financial planning, you can always reach out to us. We love helping people come up with that comprehensive financial plan, get them in alignment with their financial goals, getting really diligent about making those decisions with intentionality. So you can feel really confident going forward. You know exactly what you need to do in order to hit those financial goals. And of course, we love celebrating your successes with you. Now, if you are somebody who is sitting on the fence right now, trying to decide if it makes sense to sell a house or not, going through a divorce, we actually have a workshop coming up. It's called The Divorce Dilemma. And I think, I forget what the subtitle is. It's something like, should I sell the house, or should I stay in the marital home? Join us. It's a free workshop. It's September 6th. It's at 1 o'clock Eastern time. I'll include a link to the workshop below. I'm going to walk you through some exercises that'll really help you understand not only the expenses associated with it, but the pros and cons in a very concrete way. We're absolutely going to acknowledge the emotional attachment to the home, why people choose not to move, but also acknowledge some of the decisions that have to be made and some of the offsets, as well as some of the inherent challenges in the higher interest rate market that we are in right now, relative to where a lot of people's mortgage interest rates are. So there's a lot that we're going to dive into through that workshop. If you find yourself in that situation, or you know somebody that's in that situation, I think that's going to be a really, really helpful workshop that's completely free. So you can join us for that. Thank you so much for being here today. Again, if you have questions, concerns, always drop them in the comments. I will come back and make sure to respond to them. Or you can always reach out to me directly.